Welcome and thanks for joining us today. You're listening to the Women's Broadcast Television Expert Spotlight Show, and I'm your host, Shea Vaughn. WBTN is the all-women's internet television station with content that's created by women and for women. Today, joining us on the WBTVN Expert Spotlight is our guest, and let me tell you a little bit about this absolutely courageous woman. Having been in multiple toxic relationships, Courtney Killian has taken the hard road in life, becoming angrier and angrier. She got the idea to write her first book, Days of the Kill, and noticed that writing turned out to be a positive channel and she became less angry over time. Please help me to welcome Courtney to our show today. Courtney, you are so courageous, so courageous. So I'm just going to sit back and be quiet, and I'm just going to ask you this question. Tell us a little bit about yourself, growing up, what was that all about, and how did you get from there to where you are today?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. Growing up, I was born and raised in Texas and have lived pretty much in the Fort Worth area my entire life. Growing up, I had my parents and one sister, and my sister I didn't really get along with real well, and she had quite a hard time too. That is not my story to tell, so I will not share it publicly.
Please.
But yeah, that caused a pretty big strain in our relationship, and so pretty much every argument we had growing up every conversation we had actually was an argument. But yeah, I think that kind of transferred over to having these toxic relationships and just being used to that kind of treatment. So yeah, and so I grew angrier over time, and then one night I just got this idea for this book, and like about 3 years after my anger had just settled in, and so after sitting on that for 3 years, I just got this idea for this book, and I just ran with it, and here I am now.
Well, what I want to talk about is that journey, those toxic relationships. And I know sometimes it can be painful to constantly have to go back and visit that. But I think that it's so compelling, and I think you're so courageous to be able to tell that story. Tell me about the toxic relationships and the abuse and everything that you went through.
Right. Well, it was all emotional abuse. It was never physical. Actually, they were several long-distance relationships. The first one I really realized that was toxic was when I was 15 years old. He was 20, and he seemed like a sweet guy at first. I was just blown away that this 20-year-old was talking to me, because I was always the girl that got ignored in school. So yeah, and so I just started talking to him, and he gave me his phone number and said, hey, call me sometime. And so I did. And after we talked for a while, he wanted to make it official. So I said, yeah, okay. But then he just started getting really controlling, having to talk every single hour of the day. And I was in school. I couldn't have my phone out. And so he got overly paranoid when that happened. Any guy I talked to, even if it was my cousin, he accused me of cheating. And then he said, well, if you don't send me this kind of picture, I'm going to come to Texas, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to beat you to death. And so that went on for a while, a couple months. So I would send him the picture, and then he would point out every single flaw my body had. And so, yeah, that was just really, that was a big part of it. But he also said, well, you can talk to me and your parents, but you can't talk to any of your other friends texting. You can't call or text them. And so Yeah, that was the biggest one. A lot of the other relationships were just stuff like, oh, I'm just going to play with your feelings, or I'm just going to tell you I love you and not really love you. Or it was just little stuff like that. It's not really little, but and a couple of them were cheating. So that was a big part.
Right now you're talking about boyfriends starting at the age of 15 and, the disaster behind all of that.
Right.
Sounds like a lot of guys that you chose were, into control and weren't really, great guys.
Right.
What about your dysfunctional family?
Well, my family has gotten better. The relationship with my sister has gotten a lot better.
What about mom and dad?
My parents I've always gotten along with real well, except for the time during that horrible relationship. And my relationship with my mom was kind of strained. My dad I've just always gotten along with real well. And since that relationship, my relationship with my mom has improved. And we have our arguments here and there, but we still live together, so every family has arguments here and there. My sister and I have definitely gotten along a lot better. And she's actually married to an Army man now, 2 years ago today, actually. And they have 3 kids, and they live in Hawaii. And so...
Have you ever had a chance to go out there and visit them?
We did. Back in July, actually, we went.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous as a family to kind of get together and laugh a little bit and have some fun. So that's all good. Tell me a little bit about your book and where did the anger come from? Because the anger didn't start at 15. It didn't start with the boyfriends. Where did it come from?
Right. Well, I think a lot of it came from when I would just argue with my sister all the time.
So I want to just ask, I just want to say to you, where was mom and dad when all this fighting was going on? And did all of your anger strictly come from your sister? I mean, that sounds like a lot of anger from just one person.
Right.
And who was the referees that, should have been, maybe helping out or, being there? I mean, was this just like, okay, if you guys are going to argue, then I'm going to go close my door and you guys handle it, thing.
Right. Well, yeah, actually I was thinking about this before as well. And I think a lot of it, some of it came from my sister, but some of it came from school as well, being bullied. And I never really gave it much thought before. But yeah, just a few months ago, I was thinking, wow, I guess a lot of it came from there too. But
so bullying in school, can you give me an idea some of the incidents that you went through in school and what names you were called? What kind of bullying was it that you went through in school? Because I don't like bullies at all. I don't think anybody does. And I don't understand why anybody would put up with that, to be really honest with you, except that you're in a place where you don't have a lot of self-confidence. You don't feel like you have anybody to go to that's going to protect you. You kind of feel like you're on your own to fight your own battle, and you really don't have the skills or the tools, basically, to be able to deal with that. It's like being beat up on by a whole bunch of people, and there's just you.
Right. Well, the earliest incident I remember is in kindergarten, actually. These 2 kids that I sat by would just call me a baby, and that claimed that I was only a year old or less than a year old, and why are you even in here? And one kid even told me one time that I didn't deserve to be alive. And this was in kindergarten. And that went on for a long, long time. I believe since
a very long time, do you mean as the years went on, the same kind of words were given to you from kids growing up and getting a little bit older, but being a little bit meaner about it?
Right.
So what that manifested in you was anger.
Right.
You got angry. But I wonder, where was the anger coming from? Like anger at yourself, anger because you didn't have anybody to protect you, anger because these kids were, unfair. Maybe all of those things.
Yeah, it was a lot of those things. I got angry at myself. How dare I let them treat me that way? I got angry at them. How dare they treat me that way? Yeah, I didn't really realize this anger until after the toxic relationship, but it was there. When I look back, it was definitely there. And I just got angry over time. Like, why would they treat me that way? Why would I let them treat me that way? Why was no one protecting me? Why did my friends not stand up for me? And so, yeah, it was more than one thing, definitely.
And so many times when we're labeled with, those kinds of words, we start to believe them. There must be something wrong with us. Because
Right.
we don't know how to fight back on it. And, God made you perfect. So there's no reason to feel that way. But, kids can be cruel, and life can be cruel. And somehow we have to find the strength, as you have done, to realize that's not who you are. And regardless of who you were, at that age, you certainly didn't deserve to have those kinds of things thrown at you, because it's not a nice thing to do. And as you get older and that keeps going on, of course you're going to build a lot of anger from within. And like I said, it's going to come out in some way. I wonder if your sister wasn't, part of that. She had her side of it, but I'm sure that, being a sister, we have a way that we're going to give it to them anyway, because they're supposed to accept it and love me irregardless of what I say or regardless of what I say. And it doesn't always work like that either, because they probably are growing up, maybe going through some of the same things. And did you feel protected by your parents growing up?
I did. I did. They had a hard time with my sister as well. It wasn't just me fighting with her a lot. A lot of times my parents would fight with her. She would just say one thing that was completely against their wishes, and that would spark a big argument. And so they definitely had their arguments. When my dad was at work and my mom and sister started arguing, I would just run to my room and hide.
Exactly.
I did not want to be around it at all.
Pillow over your head because you don't want to hear it. You've heard it a million times. Or I used to often say, we should just tape this one, and then instead of arguing the next time, we can just play it back because we already know what to say.
Right, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about your book, and what can somebody learn from it?
All right, well, it's called Days of the Kill. It's a murder mystery through the murderer's eyes. Basically, a small town girl goes to Oregon to escape her dysfunctional family there again. But she realizes as she takes a teaching job that she didn't really escape it. She just brought it with her.
And we all do that.
Yes. And so basically, she just starts going out the deep end, and she starts killing people. And so, and there's twists and turns in every chapter, and so, yeah, and she just goes through a lot and starts feeling guilty around the third person, tries to act like there's nothing to hide, nothing to be guilty about. And so, and all that is while balancing work, family, and relationships.
Right.
And even though it's fictional, I think people can learn, don't sit on your anger for that long. Do what you have to do to get it out. Meditate, positive affirmations, mirror work, all of that goes a long way in helping. I used to think meditation was a bunch of crap, but it's not.
No,
it has changed my life, quite honestly.
Yeah, because I think that we need that time with ourselves to really evaluate what great people we are. And sometimes we always take a look at the negatives because we don't have anybody feeding, positive stuff to
Right.
Or at least not enough. That doesn't mean it doesn't come into our lives, but certainly, it's like being hungry. and you're getting enough to stay alive, but you're not getting enough to feed your soul.
Right.
So I understand that. So if you had a message that you wanted to leave to everyone, what would that be?
Everyone has a story, and it's not always an easy story to tell, but it can help so many people. Don't be afraid to tell your story. Any little thing you have, you may think it's not significant, but it is significant to someone. Don't be afraid to start the conversation.
Right. I hear you. I understand that you're thinking about a second book.
I am.
And doing it. So it sounds like you've found some peace within writing and telling stories and being able to share those with the rest of the world.
Yes, I very much enjoy writing. It's very therapeutic.
Oh, good. Okay, so you know what? I want to truly thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and being on the show. I want to thank our guests also that, we're so fortunate because we have the opportunity to highlight some of the world's most successful women and to hear stories from people that have overcome and, in fact, even written books on their stories and somehow been able to reach down and find that self-esteem and bring it back into their lives so that they can share that with other people. So if you're interested in being interviewed, please go to WBTVN.tv, fill out the form, and we will get back to you. Courtney, thank you once again.
Well, thank you so much.
And until the next time, we'll see you then. Take care.